Mapleshade's Vengeance, Chapter 3. Watch this, Kit! Wrinkling her muzzle in concentration, Petalkit gripped the bundle of dry moss in her jaws and shook it violently. Her brother grabbed the moss from her and tossed it across the clearing. Both kits scrambled after it, Petalkit winning by a nose. She flopped down on top of the moss. "Mine!" she declared. "Don't you want to join in?" Mapleshade asked Patchkit, who was lying in the curve of her belly. His fur matched hers so perfectly that it was impossible to tell where one stopped and the other had begun. "It looks like they're having fun." Her son shook his head. "I'm fine here," he mewed. He snuggled a little closer. "You need me to keep you warm, don't you?" His green eyes blinked anxiously at her. Mapleshade stifled a purr of laughter. She could barely feel his tiny body against hers. It was a rare cloud-free day in the rain-washed leaf fall, and the sunbeams were just strong enough to bring cats out of their dens to bask, though there was a chill in the ground that warned of leaf bear just around the corner. "You're doing a great job," she told Patchkit. "I might have to show you with the elders to stop them getting cold." Patchkit's green eyes opened wide in alarm. "No! I want to stay with you forever and ever, even when I'm an apprentice." Mapleshade nuzzled the top of his head. "That won't be for another 4 moons, little one. By then you'll be so big and strong. You'll be glad to leave the nursery and start your warrior training." "No, I won't," muttered Patchkit, burying his face in her chest fur. "I never want to leave you." Petalkit and Larchkit were standing side by side, looking at the moss. "You've ripped it to pieces," Larchkit protested. "Doesn't roll away now, look." He prodded the pile of dusty brown shreds with his paw. Petalkit shrugged. "It was trying to escape and I caught it." One of the elders, a gray tabby named Rabbit Fur, padded stiffly over to the kits. "Looks like she killed it," he observed. "Want to play a different game?" "Yes, please," meowed Larchkit. Rabbit Fur used his front paw to roll a small stone in the middle of the clearing. Then he nudged a twig with his nose until it lay a bit less than a fox length from the stone. Mapleshade propped herself up to watch. "I want you to stand by the stick," Rabbit Fur meowed, pointing with his tail, "and pounce on that stone without touching the ground in between." Petalkit blinked. "But that's almost at the other side of the clearing." "I'd have to grow wings to jump that far," meowed Larchkit. "Don't be mouse-brained," snorted Rabbit Fur. "Your father could leap twice that distance and land on the smallest leaf without disturbing a fly." Mapleshade felt a stir of alarm in her belly. Beside her, Patchkit sat up and tossed his head to the side. "Rabbit Fur's really bossy," he squeaked. Petalkit was crouched down beside her twig, wiggling her rump and braced herself for the jump. With a grunt, she heaved herself forward, but her hind paw caught on the twig. She lurched sideways, snapping the twig, and sprawled on the ground at Rabbit Fur's paws. He muttered. "Try again." This time, Petalkit managed to clear the stick, but she barely made half the distance to the stone. Rabbit Fur shook his head. "Your turn, Larchkit," he rumbled. The little brown Tom looked very determined as he hunkered down. He sprang into the air almost as high as Rabbit Fur's ears, but came down almost vertically like an acorn falling from a tree. Rabbit Fur had to dodge out of the way to avoid being squashed. "Watch out!" He gave his fur a couple of licks. "Birchface managed to pounce without flattening any cats," he grunted. Mapleshade couldn't listen to it anymore. She jumped out, dislodging Patchkit, who rolled over with a squawk and trotted over to the clearing. "Perhaps they take after me, Rabbit Fur," she meowed. "I can't pounce either." The old Tom narrowed his eyes. "You're not that bad," he rasped. "I can't believe any kid of Birchface would be heavy-footed as a badger." He glanced at Petalkit, who was licking the paw she had caught on the stick. The blood was roaring in Mapleshade's ears now. "I will not have my kids judged before they've even begun their warrior training," she hissed. "Patchkit, come here. We're going for a walk in the forest." Patchkit scampered over, but Petalkit was pouting. "I want to stay here and practice jumping," she mewed. "I want to be as good as Birchface." Rabbit Fur looked pleased. "You should be very proud of who your father was," he purred. "I remember the time we were stalking a pheasant over by Two-Leg Place. I'd never seen a bird that big, but Birchface was fearless and so quiet. I couldn't hear him over the breeze in the leaves." "I think the kits need to stretch their legs outside of the camp," Mapleshade meowed, interrupting Rabbit Fur's memories. "Come on, you free." "No arguments, Petalkit." Patch Kit's green eyes, so like Appledusk they made Mapleshade's heart flip over, were huge. Are we allowed to go outside? I thought we had to stay in the camp until we were old enough to be apprentices. I'll be with you so you'll be perfectly safe, Mapleshade told him. Oakstar and Beetail were out on patrol and Frecklewish had gone to check the barrier of soap that Snake Rocks. Rabbitfur had wandered back to his sunny spot outside the Elder's Den, apart from some dozing cats. The clearing was empty. No one would take much notice if she took her kits out. Suddenly, Mapleshade couldn't bear to be in the ravine another moment. With a whisk of her tail, she trotted towards the tunnel through the gorge. The kits bundled after her, chirping with excitement. I'm gonna catch a badger, Large Kit boasted. I'm going to watch that badger eat you first, retorted Petal Kit. Patch Kit was running at Mapleshade's heels. Don't let a badger eat me, he whimpered. Mapleshade paused beside the tunnel entrance and turned to lick Patch Kit's ears. I'll never let anything bad happen to you, she promised. With one more glance to check that they weren't being scrutinized, she gestured her kits into the branches. Ow, that's prickly, squeaked Petal Kit. Don't stop, Mapleshade urged, with a rapid beat of paws on the hard earth. The kits burst out of the tunnel and stopped dead, staring around. Wow, outside of the camp is really big. It's even bigger at the top of the ravine, Mapleshade meowed. She nudged her kids towards the path that led up to the trees. Her fur prickled at the thought of being seen by a returning patrol. The kits scrambled up the slope, Petal Kit in the lead. They looked even thinner among the tree trunks, the towering oaks and the beeches that overhung the ravine. Mapleshade hurried them along a little-used path beneath dense ferns. The kits wanted to stop and sniff every leaf, every mark on the ground, but Mapleshade kept them moving, ducking beneath the sweet-smelling fronds and hoping the fern scent would cover their tracks. The undergrowth had begun to thin out, and the sound of splashing water drifted through the trees. Large Kit pricked his ears. What's that? He mewed. As he tried to peer through the stalks, he stumbled over a fallen twig and landed on his nose. Mapleshade whisked him back to his paws before he could let out a wail. I'm glad Rabbitfur didn't see that, she thought. She couldn't deny that these kits were clumsier than their ThunderClan kin. Patch Kit had kept up, going while Mapleshade picked up his brother, and Mapleshade heard a sudden squeak of surprise. Water! Water! Everywhere! Look! His littermates bundled forward to stand beside him at the edge of the bracken. Mapleshade joined them and looked out at the dazzling brightness of the river as it flowed past, swift and sparkling. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Petal Kit whispered. Where did it come from? Mewed Large Kit. Mapleshade thought for a moment. I don't really know, she admitted. Further upstream is a deep gorge beside WindClan's territory. Can we go there? Petal Kit demanded. Mapleshade shook her head. No, little one. That's too far for you to walk today, but one day you'll see it. I promise. Patch Kit, usually so timid and happy to let his littermates try everything first, tottered over the stones at the edge of the water. Be careful, Mapleshade warned. Her son turned to look at her, his eyes shining and droplets of water glinting on his whiskers. It's okay, he mewed. Watch! Before Mapleshade could stop him, he launched himself forward and slipped into the water. For one heart-stopping moment, he vanished. Then his ginger and white face bobbed up on the surface. Look at me, he squealed. Large Kit and Petal Kit raced down the shore and plunged in. For a few strides, their little paws dug into the pebbles while water lapped their fluffy bellies. Then they were swimming through the rolling water. Mapleshade felt a burst of love like the sun coming out. Oh, Appledusk, our kits are half RiverClan, for sure. Patch Kit reached out a branch sticking out of the water and hauled himself onto it. Water streamed from his pelt, leaving it as glossy as crow feathers. He looked no bigger than a mouse with his fur flattened to his sides, and his flanks heaved as he caught his breath. Mapleshade felt a jolt of concern. Are you okay? She called. Patch Kit nodded. Still panting too hard to speak, Mapleshade paced up and down on the shore. She hated the idea of getting her paws wet, but she wasn't sure if Patch Kit had enough strength to swim back on his own. The other kits were playing hide-and-seek in a clump of reeds close by the shore. Large Kit, Petal Kit, go help your brother, she meowed. Suddenly, the rushes on the far shore rustled as a dark gray head appeared. Mapleshade froze. It was Spiketail, the River Clan deputy. In the middle of the river, Patch Kit slumped on the branch, his cheek resting on the slick bark. "What is that kit doing?" growled Spiketail. He stepped on the shore, the fur along his spine bristling. Mapleshade opened her mouth to speak, but 2 more warriors were emerging from the rushes besides Spiketail. "Is ThunderClan sending their youngest cats to evade us?" asked Milkfur, her white pelt glowing against the stones. The third cat met Mapleshade's eyes across the river. From this distance, his green eyes were unreadable. "I think one kit is hardly a threat to our territory," he meowed. "I'll return him to where he belongs." He waded into the water, his pale brown fur turning black as he slid beneath the surface. "Large Kit, Petal Kit, come here!" Mapleshade hissed. The kits wadded toward her, looking scared. "Is that River Clan warrior going to catch us?" Petal Kit squeaked. Mapleshade watched as Appledusk's head bobbed closer to the branch. "No," she meowed. "You're safe. Don't worry." Appledusk mewed something to Patch Kit, too quietly for Mapleshade to hear. Patch Kit slithered down the branch and into the water. The River Clan warrior steadied him with one paw, and then began to propel him toward the ThunderClan's shore. Mapleshade realized that the other kits were trembling from the cold and bent her head to lick their fur. "Are we in trouble?" Large Kit mewed. "Hush. Everything's fine," Mapleshade murmured between licks. Appledusk squatted out of the water, with Patch Kit dangling from his jaws. He set the kit down on the stone and nudged him to his feet. "I think this one's worn out from all that swimming," he commented. His eyes burned into Mapleshade. "You took a risk, bringing them this close to our territory." "I wanted to show them the river," Mapleshade meowed. She angled her body up, so the kits were bundled behind her, out of earshot. You could hear Large Kit asking Petal Kit what it had been like to swim so far out. Appledusk leaned forward until his muzzle was almost touching Mapleshade's cheek. "They're wonderful," he breathed. "Strong and brave and as confident as any River Clan cat in the water. I'm so proud of you." He straightened up and raised his voice. "I don't want to see you or any of these kits anywhere near the river again," he meowed. The longing in his eyes told a different story. Mapleshade bowed her head. "Of course, Appledusk. Thank you for bringing Patch Kit back." Appledusk glanced once more at the kits, then headed back into the water. "Those kits are not old enough to be out of the nursery," Milkfur called across the river. "What were you thinking of, bringing them here? They could have drowned. You may have won stunning rocks, but the river still belongs to us," yelled Spiketail. "Appledusk has been merciful this time, but from now on, stay away from our territory." Mapleshade herded the kits into the bracken. They were bouncing on their paws. Even Patch Kit, whose fur was fluffing up like thistledown, had dried. "That was the best thing ever," squeaked Larch Kit. "Can we come here again?" Petal Kit asked. "Swimming is way more fun than jumping." "I swam the farthest, didn't I?" mewed Patch Kit proudly. Suddenly, a dark shape blocked the path. Mapleshade looked up and met Ravenwing's searching blue gaze. The medicine cat glanced down at the kits. "What were they doing in the river?" he asked. Mapleshade's paws started to tingle. Did you see them?" she whispered. Ravenwing nodded. "I saw everything." "What's going on, Mapleshade?" Before Mapleshade could even reply, the kits tumbled over themselves to tell him about their adventure. "A River Clan warrior had to save Patch Kit," mewed Large Kit. "He did not. I was just resting." Patch Kit interrupted crossly. "It's fine. No one was in any danger," Mapleshade meowed as Ravenwing narrowed his eyes. "The River Clan cat was really nice," squeaked Patch Kit. "He said I was very brave and a really good swimmer." "Did he?" mewed Ravenwing. "What else did he say?" He took a step closer. Mapleshade curled her tail around the kits. "Come on, little ones. It's time to go home." Ravenwing didn't move out of the way. "You've seen an omen, Mapleshade," he murmured. "I wonder if you know anything about it?" There was something in his voice that made Mapleshade's fur prick. "Why would I know anything about an omen? I'm not a medicine cat." Ravenwing stared at her without blinking. "A tiny stream appeared in my den, in a place where no stream has run before. It carried with it 3 pieces of water reed. He swept his paws on the ground as if it was tracing the path of the rivulet. Water reed doesn't grow in ThunderClan territory, he went on. It doesn't belong inside our boundaries. Do you understand? Mapleshade shrugged. There's been so much rain this leaf fall. Bits and pieces must be washing over all over the place. She tried to keep her voice light, but there was a cold, heavy feeling in her belly, as if she swallowed a stone from the river. Ravenwing watched the kids play with an acorn, shuffling it from one to the other with her paws. I think this omen means that the river has watched 3 strange cats in the ThunderClan. 3 cats that don't belong there. Mapleshade's heart was pounding so hard she could hardly breathe. What are you trying to say? She whispered. Ravenwing gazed at her, and suddenly he didn't seem like a young, inexperienced cat anymore. Knowledge glittered in his eyes like frosty stars. Birchface is not the father of these kids, is he? Rabbitfur told me what happened today. How they showed no signs of being able to stalk or pounce like him. And don't tell me that they take after you instead, he added, cutting Mapleshade off as she opened her mouth. You tread as lightly as any ThunderClan warrior. He looked past her as the river splashed beyond the shade of the trees. I watched your kits swim in the river as if they were fish. I think these kids were fathered by a RiverClan cat. Appledusk, I'd guess, judging by the color of their fur and the way he spoke to you when he brought Patch Kit back. Mapleshade felt the ground sway beneath her paws. ThunderClan is blessed to have these 3 beautiful, strong kids, she hissed. The truth will be revealed at the right time. It's not my fault that everyone assumed Birchface was their father. I cannot let you lie to our clanmates, Ravenwing spat. And now that I know the truth, I cannot lie either. I have told you nothing, Mapleshade mewed through clenched jaws. You have told me plenty, Ravenwing responded, and there was a sadness in his sky-colored eyes. The truth must be coming out. Please, don't say anything, Mapleshade begged. These are ThunderClan's kids. They are half RiverClan. Ravenwing corrected, his voice as hard as ice. Our clanmates deserve to know. I'm sorry, Mapleshade. Sorry for you, but even sorrier for these kids. They will end up suffering for the lies that you have told. He whirled around and vanished into the bracken. Mapleshade stared after him. StarClan, help me! For a moment she considered taking her kits and running deeper into the forest, hiding her kits away from any cat who might harm them. But then she looked at Pedalkit balancing an acorn on her head while her brothers tried to knock her off her paws and dislodge it. ThunderClan loves these kids and won't do anything to hurt them. I always planned to tell them the truth. It's just happening sooner than I thought.